Today, we're going to be diving into Palantir's Q4 earnings, not the numbers getting bogged down there, but rather the sentiment. I really want to talk about this and hammer it home because ultimately stocks follow earnings, and now Palantir is guiding for earnings for the entirety of 2023 for the first time in the company's history. And so you'll see just a historical graph here on FactSet of Palantir beating EPS and then missing EPS all of last year, except for this positive surprise in Q4. And you'll see how the stock reacted, obviously, off of the back of that, and how the stock reacts when the performance isn't as great. And what I really take away from that is actually the fact that a lot of these figures were weighed down by the SPAC investments that really panned out horribly. No one, I don't think, could have predicted how bad that could have been. Certainly, I was not expecting that. But I really think this, in terms of my thesis and Palantir involved, to be that these were more or less one-time effects and that this would turn around, which is what we have seen now that those investments have fully, worked through in terms of the expenses being recognized there. But I just wanted to revisit a few tweets before we, get going here. I was taking a look at the options chain February 7th just to get an idea of where the market was expecting Palantir to end up, 1 year from that point, and it was implying a range of $5 to just south of $12, which I found is very interesting. Obviously, we've seen how the stock has performed since. I also called out that Palantir's earnings week this week was expecting a move of just 10%. I said I thought it was going to be much more than that. And of course, I wasn't privy to the news, but and also being surprised at the results as well. But I did expect a bit of a surprise in terms of what we'd seen previously. I felt the stock had been so beaten down that a good news of some kind was going to result in a sentiment shift. We're going to get into more of that in a second. But I also wanted to highlight the fact that Palantir really is doing a lot of real AI work in the sense that they're out in front of a lot of these trends. Karp talks about it a lot in regards to not, just doing PowerPoint presentations, actually doing the real work. And I think, some evidence of that was the fact they were talking about GPT with OpenAI actually the previous quarter and not the quarter where everyone else was integrating it just now. But I also wanted to discuss that Palantir was more or less set up for a beat in terms of top line. The consensus was 503 million. The guidance was a 508 to 510 million. They delivered something actually in between guidance and consensus. So more or less they were set up for a beat. And then I was breaking it down on the Bloomberg terminal here, tweeting out all of the results when that came through. So of course, we saw the first profitable quarter for Palantir, as you'll see down here, profitable GAAP net income, and so forth and so on. Obviously, you've had the full week to digest this, but largely what I wanted to highlight is in this video, I want to talk about the sentiment shift. And so I've mentioned Palantir's switch to profitability being really core to my thesis. And I think that we know how strong their margins are. We know how profitable they will eventually become in the future. But a real hit to the company in terms of, a negative perspective on it is that they're not profitable. And of course, on a non-GAAP basis, I guess you could say, obviously they've been generating tremendous positive free cash flow. But the fact that they're shifting towards profitability really is a big change, because it's not only the profitability, it's the fact that they're using profitability to get past the dilution as well as the stock-based compensation. Those are interlinked. So I really think this GAAP profitability, which they talked about so much on the call, is not just addressing one issue, it's actually addressing a myriad of issues. And I think this, I've talked about this before in regards to the rate of change of sentiment or the rate of change of expectations is significantly what drives stock prices. And so what we've seen with Palantir is they actually talked about profitability. Let's see if I can pull this up here. The 2025 proposition is what Alex Karp had said they promised previously, and what when he was saying analysts probably thought that was going to be 2027, and they actually are guiding for it in 2023. And Just to hit on one point, they weren't operationally profitable in Q4 of 2022, but no one was expecting them to be, right? And what I want to really call out there is they're actually expecting operational profitability in all of 2023, right? This is huge news. This is really a bit of a Trojan horse for anyone to say, oh, they weren't operationally profitable in Q4 of 2022, therefore they're not going to be, therefore it doesn't matter, therefore it's not news or anything like that. There's really a lot to be said about coming out and guiding for profitability in, as we've mentioned, 2023. I think it expresses tremendous confidence from management, and they didn't have to do this in terms of prioritizing it so much, but what they talked about is they believe so much in the product and what they're doing, and what Alex Karp said, essentially the story linked to profitability is that they felt as though profitability is really so core to the business in the sense that they need to be able to deliver their software to the most important institutions, as they've talked about for the longest time. He said there are a lot of questions about how they came GAAP profitable several years before expected. What does it mean for the business? How is it that seemingly no tech company has ever become GAAP profitable? I was a little bit confused by that because obviously that's not true. I don't know what the angle was there, but what has made the company profitable? And he said that the move from a company that's producing the most important products in the world to one that becomes profitable is enormous. And I really think it can't go overstated, right? And so there are a lot of people saying, oh, don't get too excited. Obviously, the price action euphoria is something to be concerned about. The fact of the matter is that when you go from Palantir, no matter how you slice it, it was unprofitable. And the fact of the matter is that in a rising interest rate environment, obviously the reason it got hit so much, as you'll see, the stock just having collapsed, is because it was and largely still is at this point a long duration name, meaning that its profits, as from the standpoint of an investor, is expected so far into the future that when the rates rise, the weighted average cost of capital increases. Essentially, the company's worth a lot less because the profits are coming way into the future, and that's basically how the math works there. But when Palantir has essentially pulled forward a lot of their financials in terms of profitability a few years, this really does change the equation when it comes to the duration of this name. No longer is Palantir going to be a long duration name. Oh, you'll get your profits as a shareholder way, way down the line 10 years from now. It really is turning into a growth story that is a profitable one, right? Because we know unprofitable growth actually can be very dangerous. And so I think obviously the sentiment is shifting in regards to Palantir. We've seen that in the change of the stock price. So I know I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here, but I want to emphasize that this is a big, big moment for the company. And I think some people are overlooking the magnitude of what is being done here. So let's see what else I had pulled up. Essentially, you can see Palantir's PEG, their price to earnings against their growth, actually just taking a plunge with the most recent earnings announcement. And so you see there now, according to FactSet, they're trading for a next 12 months PEG of about 0.9 times. And traditionally, you would see a PEG under 1 of a bargain. So if you look at some financial metrics in regards to Palantir, it still is very attractive. We know the stock's come up significantly from that low base, high return in terms of where it is now, but roughly around the direct listing price. You'd have to consider, we can go back to my tweets here. I was actually responding to Tom Nash on one of these. Yeah, right here. Here it is. So he was saying Palantir's almost back to its direct listing price of $10, not telling you to buy or sell, just beware of price action euphoria. So I responded by saying, really, I do think this, move in the stock price is justified if you consider where the company was then and where it is now. For the stock to still be trading at that same price, it really does seem like a bargain, in my opinion. Doubling the revenue, turning profitable, increasing their cash on hand, doing that all while increasing their client base is really actually remarkable, especially in this macro environment. So of course, the market's been hit hard. It's not to say there isn't, downside upcoming for Palantir along with the broader markets. I think that's definitely possible. But I really don't think price action euphoria, I guess I would say, is like, I guess we're all subject to that. I know Tom Nash had some DCFs in the $40 range. I had my fair share of very positive videos when the stock was much higher. But I think this time you really have to consider, what is the change? There's actually a meaningful reason behind the stock increasing. And I was largely expecting a significant increase off of the back of this announcement from Palantir. I know the stock was, just up 8% in the morning after the announcement. And we've seen, more than a 30% increase after that. That really was in line with what I was expecting. I think this, it makes sense to me. I think the market is getting it. It's not to say, things couldn't turn around. But back to some of these financial metrics, price to sales for Palantir is really at close to a relative low. If you actually look back at where it has been, obviously astronomically high at like 70 times sales back in 2021. And of course you can say, oh, they're trading for 6 times. Now they're trading for 11 times, but the market has rebounded. And I'd say relatively, 10 times for sales for Palantir. We really need to see the growth materialize. But it's not out of whack, I'd say, at this point. And another concern with Palantir is, what happened to the growth, right? Now they're putting forth profitability instead of growth, I guess you could say, which I don't disagree with that strategy for this environment. I think you need to be, super careful about, as I had mentioned previously, profitable growth. And so I think that's what they're putting forth. They've said, like, this is actually really important for the company, for the vitality of the company, and profitability, so that then they can really invest a lot back into the business while being profitable. So I think it's super important that they're doing that. But that's not to say that growth has been amazing. It certainly hasn't. But if you look at what they're expecting going forward, I'm actually pretty pleased. Not with the guidance for fiscal 2023, but with some of the breakdowns in regards to commercial. I think we're still going to see some good increases across the board if we take a look back at the end of this year, potentially into next year. So I'm not too concerned about the growth. I think the story really now is profitability. And if someone told me that, Palantir is going to turn profitable and the stock is going to only be at the DPO price, I would probably say that doesn't make sense to me. And I'm going to have to rework my entire financial model in regards to this profitability development and story. We've been monitoring this very closely. This has been very linked. It's very key to the thesis for Palantir. So do not overlook this. I know, some people would rather, back out a lot of this euphoria and excitement, I guess you could say, but this is a very fundamental and meaningful development in regards to Palantir. And I also wanted to highlight some of the Wall Street analysts' reactions in regards to what they've changed, how they've changed their price targets, if at all. So here we see at the bottom here, this first one, a hold rating on the stock with an $8 price target. That actually was an increase in the price target. Morningstar, $9 price target, increased their price target. Wolf Research, $6 price target, increased their price target. RBC, holding a $5 price target, or sell rather, but kept it the same. Jefferies actually downgraded to a hold with a $10 price target. I don't know what's going on there. Raymond James, $15 price target. And Deutsche Bank Research, a $6 price target, and we've got another one up here, not visible to me. But the average price target is $8.68, and that's the latest that I have access to right here. And largely, it looks like Palantir is still viewed unfavorably from Wall Street, and I think that's certainly a good thing. You don't want to buy when a stock is incredibly favorable. You want to do your own research and figure out when things are going to change. But I do think this is a moment for a paradigm shift for Palantir. I think Alex Karp, really made that clear in regards to expectations going forward. And I would just like to say it's great to see him on the conference calls. It's been a full year of having him on each call for 2022, and now we're into 2023. And I just remember when he didn't used to be on the calls. And I think it's totally different. It's awesome to have the CEO leading the calls. I know I would have liked to hear more from Sham, but it sounded like he was elsewhere during that conference call. But all that to say, it looks like half the analysts are not too sure about where the stock is headed. I think that's probably true for the majority of the market. It really could go either way at this point, and I think that just means there are more opportunities out there if you take a longer term perspective, and potentially. Yeah, I think potentially this year could be a big one for Palantir. Profitability really caught me off guard. I would say, though, that the stock increase didn't necessarily catch me off guard. When you have a stock just dragging along the bottom for so long and the sentiment has been so low, I think it really was primed for a turnaround. And so we'll have to see where things go from here. Obviously, no promises of future results. But back to what I said, is the options market was only pricing in, a $12 maximum price for Palantir for a 1-year range just a couple weeks ago. And so I think these results in general caught the market off guard. I think there's going to be a lot of positive revisions, I guess you would say, for Palantir going forward. Super excited about this year for Palantir. As I said, I'm going to be doing a lot more research into the company, figuring out, revising my intrinsic value for the company and the fundamentals. But I just want to make this video and say, super excited about the results for Q4 of 2022. Super excited about the implications for fiscal 2023. This is not all hype. This is actually a lot of what we've been expecting for the company coming to fruition and happening even sooner than I had, expected at this point. So I think it's great news for all shareholders. Hopefully we have even better news to come at this point. Thank you for watching, and until next time.